back with the first 63 AC30, first of two, and the faceplate cleaned up really nicely. It's got the new period correct knobs in place. Well, mostly period correct. They're not exactly the same as the originals, but they are more than close enough. Get a little more light on here. I took the plastic nuts off, gave them a round and the ultrasonic cleaner, and took the jacks down and cleaned them all out, put everything back, looking good. Such a pretty red these things have. You can see how well the chassis has cleaned up since when it first came in. New output tube sockets in place with these good spring retainers. The old ones that have the little clips, that was part of the old tube base itself, and that's not really on the market anymore, but these are really nice quality. The owner supplied an old Woden choke from 1963. Hopefully it will be good. It seems to be good, just basic measurements. So the mercury that was in here is no more. And there is also provided from the owner an Albion Albion output transformer, which will try to do a compare and contrast between the Woden and the Albion when everything else is done, time permitting. You'll notice that missing preamp tube socket there. More on that in a moment. All right, this area cleaned up really nicely, and I've put everything back pretty much the way it was built originally as much as possible, though I'm not using the 100 ohm and 1.5 Ks. This gives tubes better protection and keeps the time constant the same once you change the screen grid. So this is not heat shrink. This is Teflon insulation stripped from some wire, which is a time-consuming way to do it, but it's the best way. Heat shrink insulation just kind of melts when you have all that much soldering. And the new cathode bus there. And I will be installing some 100 ohm half watt heater balance resistors from the heater here to the cathode. I've got a 75 ohm resistor temped in for the output bias. I don't know whether that's going to end up being 75 or 62 or 50 or whatever. Once we have the bias set, then I'll install it neatly and install the proper cathode bypass cap. The old one that someone else had put in there was kind of chewed up, so this new one's here. It's got a bit of silicone on the other side. Still hasn't quite set up yet. Discreet though, it's not really visible that there's silicone there, but we don't want it banging around. And I'm going to run a ground wire from here to the ground in the preamp itself. And still to come, I've got a better quality fuse holder than the one that the amp came with. It'll be going over in that section. But it even smells better. Next, I was about to replace a bunch of burned wire going to this tube socket, which is the first preamp tube for the top boost and brilliant channels. Later, I'll replace things like that. But in the process of removing wire, I discovered the previous person who gummed it all up had managed to really mess this socket up. They had broken off pin 6, and it was just being held in place by a bit of silicone. So, you know, I've got a belt and socket I'll put in here, and this won't be missed. It'll be returned with the amp if some insane collector ever wants it. Get that bit of hair or wire out while I'm looking at it. But I'm going to get in there and clean this area of the chassis before I do anything else. Because right here is where a lot of the grounds are made. I want to get all that funk off. It's just gross. Before I show the new and improved preamp socket wiring, I forgot to mention that I intentionally did not use the same turret layout the JMI did, because it's hard to get resistors with long enough leads these days. And so to reach from this screen here all the way to here just wasn't feasible with the values I wanted. Just resistor leads tend to be shorter these days. Anyway, back to the preamp stuff. Okay, new belt and socket in place. And while the wire I used will not be confused for the original, it is in the spirit of the original. It's 20 gauge stranded with Teflon coating. One thing I did differently than the original is they had 2 blue wires from the cathode of this tube right here. The cathode's going to the same point because both tubes share a cathode. I assume they did that because the tube socket they used had a center post, but I just joined them across the tube like that, a la Fender and others. It's no big whoop. It just reduces the clutter in this area. So everything's nice and clean, good grounds, and got to put the new double 8 filter cap in place and secure it. I've got the ground for it. And I'll probably run new positives to it because these old ones are pretty funky. And then I'll run the wires to the cut circuit. Once all that is done, I'll put the output coupling caps in place. I knew I was going to be doing a lot of soldering here, and I didn't want 2 very large film caps anywhere near where I'm going to be doing a lot of soldering, just because it makes it difficult to keep from burning and melting things. So I just kind of try to, the more you do this, the more you learn to do things in certain stages and layers. And those broken tabs there, that was the previous guy, not me.